So this is a video for Life is Futile, who's been asking some questions in the comments. It's for Life is Futile and it's not for everyone, and it's really not going to be much good for Life is Futile because I'm not even going to answer the question. The question is what connects a central bank's base rate, or whatever that particular central bank might call its base rate, to what a normal bank might charge in the high street. It's impossible to answer, certainly in a video like this. One thing that would be useful for other people, though, that might have come this far, is to run through the stuff that we have discussed in comments on that video, which is what the mainstream media talk about, vaguely that sort of subject, which runs through we've gone through again from the ECB, who have now put their deposit rate for banks at a negative territory, which is meant to force the banks to lend that money to people. I didn't expand on the fact that banks don't lend that sort of money to people. Obviously, they just make new money to lend to people. But in the mainstream media, and even in the not Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, even their specialist journalists get these things wrong. You can hear things like exactly that it'll force them to lend the money to small and medium enterprises or something, which is utter nonsense. Other places, or even there, you might hear things like since 2009, banks have been able to borrow at zero from the central bank and lend out at 3, 4, 5, whatever percent, or credit cards and lend out at 30%, implying that the banks borrow their money from the central bank. And you go, yeah, where'd you get that one from? Or you get the people that say, the bank pays me 0.1% on my deposits, but it's lending my next door neighbour, an SME, at 7% to buy a new printing press. They're making out like bandits. In other words, implying that they're lending the deposit money to the next door neighbour. All of it is wrong. And as I said to Life is Futile, the Bank of England, who's put out these videos explaining this is wrong because banks do it this way, hasn't got its way into the meme set of the mainstream media. They insist on repeating utter nonsense. Okay, but the question, what links the base rate to the loan rate? And as I said in the last comment, because it was about the ECB, the best thing to say is nothing, because a German SME can borrow at 2% and an Italian SME has got to borrow at 6%, the same central bank. It's at the discretion of the bank what they want to lend at, their money that they're going to create out of fresh air. But it's more instructive to go through the old system of the Fed. And thinking of this, I was tempted to think it's a series of dominoes, but a very complicated series of dominoes. And I could think about 6 or 7, with the first one being the Fed creating a rate which influences the rate which banks lend to each other, and that would be the first domino. And then I could think of at least 6 more before it got to a rate that the local bank is likely to charge you for an overdraft loan or any other sort of loan, or the mortgage rate. But even then, when I started linking them together, it's not even dominoes. They are very indirectly linked. It's just not a domino sort of system. It's a kind of, most of the time, I fart here, which puts up some pigeons there, which blocks out the sun there, which changes the amount of light falling on my eyes, which makes the camera picture wrong, which might make me angry, which might mean that I'll go down to the pub later. It's that sort of domino. It's very tenuous. And not only that, since the first domino has changed so much, as in the central bank used to affect what banks, the rate banks used to lend to each other, only operated because the banks held such small reserves at the central bank, and now they've got sodding trillions. So the entire indirect domino system just doesn't work anymore, won't work anymore, and will not work for years, probably will never work again. And this is why I say things like, if there was a war, they could just go ram, bang, and introduce a whole new system and use that new system. But without a war, they've got to pretend that they're going to get back to the old system, and somehow they're going to reduce the bank's trillions of reserves down to the old system of 2007, where the first domino will work again. But really, they know they never will, or they can't know what never is, but they're planning now for a new first domino. And they've been planning it for about 6 months, and if you read the website, you would have had plenty of time to ignore it, because it is an ultimately fantastically ignorable subject. It is really not very interesting at all. And that would just be the new first domino, and there are all the other dominoes that used to work after the Fed funds rate altering the rate that banks lend to each other. All the subsequent dominoes for they don't work anymore. It's not that they're putting the first domino in place that's just going to go back to work in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just won't work on 2. It just doesn't work on 2. It's not going to work on 3, and certainly not on 4. It's got to be a whole new system of getting things to work, which they're working on, but it's just incredibly difficult. So this is why I can't answer your question. What links a central bank's base rate to what the interest rate your local bank might charge you? It's impossible to say anymore. It was always difficult, but now it's just plain impossible. So I'm sorry, cannot do it. And I'll do this. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to learn these things, and I've been trying to learn them for a good few years now. They are impossible to learn. Things do not fit together with any sort of logic. You can understand the banking system from different points of view, but when you change and look at it from another point of view, this point of view is not worth knowing. You've got to look at it from this point of view and understand it from that point of view, know it from this point of view and understand it from that point of view, and you can have 3, 4, 5, 6 other different points of view to understand the banking system from. They're all about correct, but they really have got, it's just not the same way of looking at the same thing. And the banking system just does not link into economics at all. And this is the main gripe of decent economists like Steve Keen, who point out to bad economists like Paul Krugman, who say in the modern system, banking, money and debt does not matter. And Mervyn King, the old director, what do they call it, boss of the Bank of England, said exactly the same thing in 2008 or something like that. Economists don't think that the banking system matters. This is why they don't know anything about it. They don't know how it works. So this is why the experts talk nonsense about it. But good luck with trying to link it together. Most all of these things really don't link together very well at all, as far as I can gather anyway. You can learn more about it, but it's a big slog for not much reward. You really don't get much you can really nail down and say this is this and that is that. It's all very, very airy-fairy, I'm afraid. Life is futile. I thank you. Bye.